3 kilometers from the summit of a climb, on a slope steep enough to fold a grown man over his handlebars, Andy Schleck stands up and goes. The crowd is pressed tight to the tarmac, and the riders climb through a tunnel of noise. Schleck threads it. His legs are long and thin, and they spin in that loose, almost casual way that has carried him to the front of bike races for 2 years now. He looks back once, the way a cat looks back, checking. Then he keeps going. This is the move. Maybe the move of his career. He has 31 seconds on Alberto Contador and a time trial coming on Saturday where he expects to lose most of it. So the math is simple. He needs time here, in these mountains, today. He is dropping the strongest stage racer of his generation on the hardest climb of the day. And for about 4 seconds, it's going perfectly. And then his chain comes off. To understand why a drop chain became one of the most argued about moments in the history of the modern Tour de France, you have to understand what was at stake when it happened and who these two men were. Alberto Contador arrived at the 2010 Tour as the best GC rider on the planet and the heavy favorite. He had won the thing twice already. He could climb with anyone and time trial with almost anyone. He was the defending champion. He was supposed to win. Except the opening weeks didn't go according to script. Contador was quiet throughout the early skirmishes, oddly muted, and when the race hit the Alps, it was the other man who came out ahead. Andy Schleck was 25 years old, from Luxembourg, riding for Saxo Bank alongside his older brother Frank. He was a pure climber, all elbows and angles, a rider who looked like he'd been assembled from coat hangers. In the high mountains, he was sublime. Everywhere else, descending, time trialing, holding a wheel in the wind, he was vulnerable, and everybody knew it, including him. So his entire tour strategy was built on a single concept. Gained so much time going uphill that the rest of it couldn't be taken back. Out of week 1, Schleck had the yellow jersey by 41 seconds. Contador clawed a few back in the second week and trimmed the gap to 31. The two of them had been circling each other for a fortnight by the time the race reached the Pyrenees, shadowing, testing, neither landing a killing blow. It was building like a distant storm, and everyone could feel it coming. They just didn't know what day it would break. It turns out it would be on stage 15. 187 kilometers, 2 big climbs, a summit, then a long descent into the finish. A break of 10 went up the road early, the usual arrangement. The GC men content to let them dangle. Up front, the break was thinning out, and out of it emerged the one rider in France guaranteed to make the home crowd lose their minds. Thomas Voeckler. You have to give Voeckler his due, because what happened later overshadowed a brilliant ride, and that's part of the tragedy of the stage. 2 men got robbed here. One of them you could consider Andy Schleck. The other was Thomas Voeckler, who won the biggest race of his year and barely got to keep the spotlight for a single news cycle. Voeckler was 31. France had loved him since 2004, when he held a yellow jersey for 10 improbable days as a young man and turned every defense of it into a theater act. He had built an entire career out of days exactly like this one. The breakaway, the solo move. The last 5 kilometers into the finish were a frantic, joyful, lung-bursting effort to the line. A victory parade run at full gas. He crossed first by nearly 3 minutes. It was the 5th French stage win of the race. He had no idea, riding those final kilometers, that the bigger story of the day was unfolding behind him on the mountain. So, back to the climb. 19.5 kilometers long, ramping up to gradients of 13%, and a group of about 24 of the best climbers in the world started up it in Voeckler's wake. There was feinting, there was parrying. Schleck lost his last teammate, which on another day might have been the moment to sit back. Instead, with under 3K to the top, he slipped into the lead of the group, gathered himself, and came through it on the attack. Legs whirring, one glance back over the shoulder. This one was meant to stick. Contador's teammate Alexander Vinokurov reacted first, jumping across the gap. Contador was behind, accelerating hard, maybe 20 meters back and closing. Vinokurov was coming level to Schleck on the right-hand side, and on the left, a flash of blue and yellow. Contador in the distance, arriving. That's the instant Schleck's chain gave up. Underload, shifting, grinding up a steep pitch, he'd thrown the chain off the ranks. The pedals went weightless under him. His momentum died. To anyone watching on TV, it was instantly, painfully obvious what had happened. Whether it was that obvious to Contador in the heat of the moment, with a teammate ahead of him and 2 other GC rivals on his wheel, that's the €8 million question, and we'll come back to it. What's not in dispute is what actually happened. Contador didn't slow. He surged over the top of the pass and threw himself down the descent, through the sweeping curves, taking Samuel Sanchez and Dennis Menchoff with him, 3rd and 4th on GC, both very happy to ride on. Behind them, Schleck was off the bike. It took him 2 fumbling attempts to reseat the chain. In a moment where seconds were the entire currency of the tour, he was standing at the side of the road with grease on his fingers. By the time he was clipped back in and moving, the gap was 13 seconds at the summit. He chucked himself into the descent. Never his strength, and he knew it, with Jurgen van den Broek for company and Vinokurov marking him. On the way down, the gap grew, 22 seconds. The yellow jersey was sliding off his shoulders in real time, on a road he couldn't descend fast enough to save it. He crossed the line 39 seconds down on Contador. He had started the day leading the tour by 31 seconds. He ended it trailing by 8. Here's where the day becomes an argument that's still going. There's a piece of etiquette in pro cycling, old and unwritten, that says you don't attack the race leader when he suffers a mechanical or crash. You wait, you ease up, you sit up, you let him get back on. The custom usually runs through the chief rival himself. It's the man with the most to gain who's supposed to call the dogs. Armstrong and Ulrich famously did it for each other. In a sport with a long and dark relationship with the truth, this little courtesy has sometimes felt like one of its few genuinely noble traditions. Contador's defenders argued the code didn't apply, and they had a case worth hearing. Schleck was the one who attacked. He took the risk, and the chain coming off was a mistake of his own causing. Nobody on this reading owes you anything. Contador's own version leaned on a slightly different point. He simply didn't know. Quote, I was attacking and I was past him before I knew what had happened. Different people will have different opinions. And different people immediately and loudly did. The television commentators called it a defeat for fair play. Saxo Bank, Schleck's team, reached for the diplomatic word and called the move untraditional, which is the kind of thing you say when an honest word might get you fined. The crowd made its feelings plainer. When Contador was presented with the yellow jersey, sections of the roadside booed him. Schleck, for his part, was furious in a way he didn't bother to hide. Quote, I wouldn't want to take the jersey like that. My stomach is full of anger, and I want to take my revenge. Stage 17 finished at the summit of the Col du Tourmalet, the most storied climb in the Pyrenees, in cold, wet, and miserable weather. Schleck went looking for his 8 seconds and more. He attacked. Contador followed. He attacked again. Contador followed again. And it stayed that way the whole way up the mountain. 2 men, alone, matched in a duel, neither able to shake the other loose. Schleck took the stage win at the top, Contador sitting on his wheel and declining to contest it. A small courtesy returned, but not a single second changed hands. It was one of the most beautiful duels the sport had produced in years. And in a way, it was also unbearable to watch, because people present understood the thing hanging over it. This was the only moment that should have decided the tour, and had already been decided 3 days earlier by a derailleur. The time trial came on Saturday, 52 kilometers against the clock, and it went exactly the way both men had always known it would. Contador was a better time trialist. He extended his lead. He rode into Paris in yellow, and won his 3rd Tour de France. An invisible asterisk may have hung over the win for some people. Purists never forgave the manner of it, but it was a win recorded and ratified for a few weeks, until the CAS got involved. Either way, what do we actually make of Chaingate 15 years on? You can argue the ethics forever, and people do. Maybe Contador genuinely didn't see it. Maybe the code shouldn't protect a man from the consequences of his own attack and his own poor shifting decisions. Maybe Schleck, a famously terrible descender, would have coughed up time on that downhill anyway, and that lead change was always coming. All of those are perfectly reasonable, but none of them really settled the unease. It was about a feeling, the sense that for one afternoon, a sport that occasionally rises to something like grace chose instead to take the seconds. 8 seconds, a dropped chain, and a code that may or may not have been broken. That's Chaingate. If you made it this far, thank you for coming along. This is the kind of story 124 Cycling exists to tell. The moments where the sport gets complicated, where the racing and the history and the human mess all tangle up together. If you want more, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming. We've got plenty more of this in the works. We'll see you guys on the next video.